Hello there, welcome back to the Daughters of Wisdom YouTube channel. Some of you may have been watching the Daughters of Wisdom on YouTube for a while, and today we're going to be talking about the topic of honesty. But you might think, didn't you guys already talk about that when you talked about lying? Remember, February 18th, one of our first videos, we talked about no lie, no matter how small, is ever acceptable. Well, we say no. That discussion was primarily about telling the truth. In our opinion, honesty is primarily about the truth we tell ourselves, our inner dialogue. So that's the perspective we're going to talk about today, the inner dialogue and being honest with ourselves.
So, when we think about self-honesty, we're referring to those internal talks that we have with ourselves, where we truly examine an issue and speak the truth to ourselves. I'm not a smoker, but let's use an example. Let's say that I'm addicted to smoking. Most of the time, I ignore any thoughts about how smoking is not good for me, and I am spending a lot of money for something that I burn up.
Yes, good point.
Most of the time.
Most of the time.
But occasionally, I allow myself to be honest with myself. I even only in a discussion that occurs just up here in my brain.
Yeah, brain talk.
Brain talk. And that discussion might look a little bit like this. I admit it. I'm addicted. I admit it. I've tried to stop, but I've been unsuccessful every time I've tried. I admit it. Smoking is terrible for my health. We all know that. I admit it. I would have more money if I did not spend so freaking much money on cigarettes. I admit it. My friends keep pestering me to stop, and I get angry with them because they do.
I got a story to tell. I used to be really addicted to Diet Pepsi, and I would have, admittedly, probably between 4 and 6 Diet Pepsis in one day at work. And oftentimes, I had a really good friend who worked for me, and sometimes she would try to talk to me about it, Peggy. And I just couldn't see it, and it made me angry. And I think that that's something we want to talk a little bit about here is self-talk can also include some feedback from close friends. So.
Yeah, exactly. So you have a situation where a friend is a friend who cares about you.
Yeah,
we're talking about someone who really cares about you, not Joe Blow who's going to make some snotty remark.
Yeah.
You have somebody who has noticed something maybe in your behavior, in the case of Diet Pepsi or smoking or whatever, and they say to you, Charlie, shouldn't you maybe think about this a little bit?
Cut back.
Cut back.
Do you really need 6 Pepsis a day?
Yeah. Now the thing of it is, you need to look at this a little bit and think about it. And our initial reaction almost always is peeved or angry. Why would you say something to me like that? Well, you need to look at it from another side and say, maybe this person has noticed something that I have not been able to let myself notice. And maybe I should look at it and think about it.
And since we're talking about being honest with ourselves, I wanted to interject that thing about the Diet Pepsi, because I think that was probably one of the first times I started having that brain talk about how maybe I was being excessive. So anyway, a personal story.
It's something to think about, yeah. And so these private brain discussions that we're talking about, when the mind is relaxed enough to be honest enough to tell the truth to ourselves.
Yep.
I mean, there are moments, using the smoking thing, where you say, okay, I'm a smoker, and maybe I shouldn't be a smoker because it does this and this. Mm-hmm. So these are the times when you're vulnerable enough to begin the process of change. Perhaps you can use that as a way to move forward and say, I need to change this behavior or something else, and it's a positive thing.
Yeah. So let's kind of go back to that earlier example of honesty with yourself and change. In all honesty, I don't think we ever really make a worthwhile change in our behavior until that moment in which we're honest with ourselves. In fact, the Daughters of Wisdom, I don't think we even believe it's possible to begin down that path of change until you start with this kind of internal dialogue. And we're not necessarily talking about chatting it up with your friend, although that can be very helpful. But that's why I was trying to make the distinction in the introduction with the lying thing, that we're really focusing here on the, let's be honest, right in here. So...
Yeah. Well, don't worry. If you have one of those mind discussions, no one else can hear you.
Well, that's true. That's true.
So at least there is that.
Yeah. And, truth, it unfolds when you're honest with yourself. And there's no pressure. You don't have to, when you're doing this, you're not creating a false outside, because you're just having this internal dialogue. There's nobody out there to hear you. You can just let it all hang out. So, good time.
Maybe you should look in a mirror a little bit. You can see the real you in there.
Yeah. I also thought that it was interesting because I've done this kind of off and on in my life, but some people find it really helpful to write in a journal when they're having these internal dialogues, because how your brain is, it forgets things pretty fast. But if you kind of jot things down, it might be another thing you can reflect back on with an issue that you're dealing with. So anyway,
it makes things more real.
It does.
I've done this also in my life. If you write things down, it makes it more concrete. It's more real.
It's not just your little brain going.
Yeah, you're not just kind of spinning your wheels, so to speak. Yeah. But even there's no one around to impress. You can sometimes get right up to the brink of confronting something, of honesty with yourself. Yeah. And then you take a step back and you say, I'm just not ready for this, and that's okay. Yeah. We don't judge, and we're not going to hear you anyway. So you can take another run at it another time. The Daughters of Wisdom hope that our non-judgment comes through with all of our Let's Talk sessions that we have here on YouTube, because this is not an idea to judge people or even yourself. Yeah. It's really up to you, always up to you, to decide what's right in your life, what's not right in your life, what changes need to be made or not. And honestly, it extends to the external as well when you're talking about honesty. Yeah. We're just going to make a mention here because we're focusing on the internal. But we are. Plainly, the external is an obvious thing, like don't steal from your employer. That's dishonest. Yeah. That kind of thing. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, we used stopping smoking as an example because I think probably all of us know somebody, if we're not smokers, and neither one of us are, but at least we've known family members or somebody who is. But it could be something else that you have this brain chat with. So you might be a fearful person, or you might be somebody who seems to get angry a lot, or maybe you need to lose weight. You might be somebody who does a lot of impulsive shopping.
Yeah, you buy too much stuff, yeah.
Yeah, you're in debt, and any of these things can get in our way of contentment. I don't like to use that word happiness. I like to think of the Daughters of Wisdom urging people to do things that create more contentment in their life. So we have to be the initiators of those internal dialogues, using the journal as a way to make it more real, as Peggy said. But one thing we all have to realize is that this personal honesty can be one of the most painful psychological events in our life, because it's so much easier to be in a place of denial I can tell you it's easier to say there's nothing wrong with 6 Diet Pepsis a day. I'm surprised I wasn't flat out, when I get a cold that I probably had no immune system because of all those Diet Pepsis. But
and no food.
That's true. There comes a point, or many points in your lifetime, where you're ready to have that brain talk, honest moment with yourself, and that's what we're encouraging people to do. Darn it.
Yeah. Well, here's the reality. We're not immortal.
Oh, darn.
Time does eventually run out.
I know.
Self-honesty is a way of opening the path before us to a more fruitfully lived life.
Yeah.
And, of course, fruitful is different for every individual.
Yeah.
So we're not saying do it this way or do it that way. We're just saying that find the path that's right for you. And the Daughters of Wisdom have never given an assignment before.
We haven't.
Our little discussions. But we're going to we're going to forge a new territory here.
Okay.
Break with our previous tradition. And this time around, we're going to encourage everyone who listens to go there at some point in the next week.
Yeah.
Take a quiet time and confront some of the issues in your life that you have been avoiding. Or maybe just take one for the first go around.
Good.
And really just, confront it and think about it. You don't have to discuss it with somebody else. That's not the goal here.
Yeah. No judgment. And if you want to, you might even try putting something in a journal. I keep using that term, but it could just be, a Word document on your computer. It doesn't really matter, but as
does.
Peggy says, it makes it more real. So
yeah.
Now might be the time.
So next week,
May 14th, Tuesday, we're going to talk about strength, what it means, how to find some. We really appreciate comments, so we invite you to comment on our program today on our YouTube page. And if you want to, come over to our Facebook page and join a conversation there on internal honesty. So, see you next week, Peggy.
very much. See you soon.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.